Happy Father's Day by creepypasta user LJ. Howard Simpkin was a quiet man, a nice man. Everybody said so. Who could have foreseen the future? Howard grew up in the small town of Dackenby, the son of average parents of average wealth. In fact, everything about Howard's life was decidedly average. Even his job, an accountant. He was a stand-up comedian's wet dream. As a young man, Howard found it difficult mixing with others of his age, and therefore became a bit of a loner. His life, like his balance sheets, calculated to boredom. Definitely into the minus column. That was until the July of the summer of 1975, when he met Brenda and the balance of his life moved firmly into the plus column. He fell in love with her immediately. Howard, however, held no hope of Brenda feeling the same way about him. How could she? Brenda, to look at, was nothing special. Most people wouldn't have given her a second glance. But to Howard, she was the air that he breathed, the sun that warmed him. One day, summoning all the courage he possessed, he asked Brenda out, and to his amazement, she agreed. Howard spent the rest of that day walking on air. To think that a beautiful woman like Brenda had agreed to go out with a nobody like him. His parents, who were kind people, took an instant dislike to Brenda right from the start, which Howard couldn't understand as he was blinded by love and could see no wrong in her. Howard was not a wealthy man, but he had saved most of his money up till now, as his lifestyle had been meager. This changed in the coming months. He started spending with vigor, his savings diminishing with every additional gift he bought for Brenda. "The smile on her face is worth all that I own," he would tell others. However, Howard was aware of the gossip mongers, the troublemakers who had nothing to do but spread their vicious rumors. They would say that Brenda was only with him for what she could get, that she was nothing but a gold digger. Shortly after, his father died. Howard asked Brenda to marry him, but she said it was too soon, that she wasn't ready. Months after his father's death, his mother passed away too, as if her need to be reunited with her husband outweighed the need for her life. Howard was left everything, the house, the car, and a sizable chunk of money from life insurance policies. These gains did nothing to ease his loss. He felt like his life was rapidly being drawn downwards back into the minus column. Having nothing to lose except for rejection, he plucked up the courage to ask Brenda to be his wife. This time, to his overwhelming joy, she accepted. It seemed everyone knew what was going on except poor old Howard. The gravy train had pulled up, and good old Brenda was determined to grab a first-class seat up front. For Howard, the wedding was one of the happiest days of his life. And Brenda? Well, Brenda turned up. For the first year of their marriage, everything seemed to be good. Howard still worshipped her and showered her with gifts. Then it happened. Brenda became pregnant. Howard was thrilled to bits. Brenda was not. Talk of abortion from Brenda's lips, but for the first time in their relationship, Howard put his foot down. 8 months later, at 2:32 a.m., an 8-pound, 7-ounce baby girl was born, Emma Louise Simpkin. Howard's pride and joy. To Howard, Emma was a blessing. To Brenda, she was a rival for Howard's affections and, more importantly, his gifts. Things between Howard and Brenda went steadily downhill from the birth of their daughter. Brenda showed little to no interest in Emma and spent more and more time going out for various reasons. She had disclosed to Howard before they married that both her parents were dead and that she had no family to speak of, yet all of a sudden she had sick relatives all over the country that she just had to visit. Howard had also noticed Brenda was turning more heads lately, in part due to the fine clothes and expensive makeovers he had paid for. Slowly, he began to take over the role as mother, as well as that of provider. And due to his very understanding boss, he was able to do more and more of his work from home, in order to spend as much time as he could with his daughter. Over time, as Howard's love for his daughter grew, so did his hatred for Brenda. He wasn't stupid. He knew what she got up to on her little trips. He smelt the aftershave on her clothes. He noticed the smug look on her heavily made-up face. If it wasn't for Emma, his life would have been unbearable. Every year on Father's Day, Howard would stand Emma against the kitchen door and measure her height, making up a poem as he did and singing it to her. Emma always laughed and hugged her father, while her mother would stand and sneer, assuming, of course, she was around that particular day. It was on one of these occasions that things changed. Emma was 9, and Howard had just measured her. "Quiet Emma, so good, so sweet, 4'2" from head to feet," he sang. Emma, as usual, hugged her father and laughed. Brenda, on the other hand, appeared in the doorway, 2 suitcases by her side, the familiar sneer upon her face. She told him he was pathetic and that she was leaving him. She told him a few home truths that anybody in town could and did tell him years ago. Brenda's leaving made no difference to Howard, as he had spent the best part of the last 7 years hating the sight of her anyway, and from that day forward, she was referred to only as Burn in Hell Brenda. For years after her departure, everything was great. Emma was doing really well at school and had become Howard's life. He worshipped her and showered her with love and gifts, as he had once done with Burn in Hell Brenda. Then, things gradually started to change when Emma hit her teens. She became unruly and disobedient. She began to run around with what he had decided were a bad crowd. He could not believe it was his Emma's fault, not even when he had visits from the police about her shoplifting. He even decided it must be something he was doing wrong. He could never think ill of his precious Emma. She would scream obscenities at him and show him the finger, but he still thought it was his doing. Years before, she was grateful for the gifts he gave her. Now, she expected things, throwing temper tantrums until she got what she wanted. As time passed, things just became steadily and steadily worse, and Howard yearned for the days when his daughter would hug him and laugh with him like she did every Father's Day. Time passed, and he began to realize he could no longer blame others, not even himself, for Emma's behavior. It was obvious that Emma was becoming more like her mother, Burn in Hell Brenda. A clone of the woman he'd grown to despise, and one bitch was enough. Howard would not suffer another, certainly not his precious daughter Emma. So, here he was, another year had passed, and again it was Father's Day. Howard checked the temperature of the water in the bowl, and draping the flannel over the edge, picked it up. Making his way upstairs, he shouldered open the door to Emma's room, walked over to the chair next to the bed, and sat down. After wetting and wringing out the flannel, Howard began to gently bathe the stumps just below the knees where Emma's legs had once been. The legs that ran around with the bad crowd. He then began to bathe the stumps just below the elbows where the arms and hands had been, the hands that had given him the finger. As he bathed her, he looked into Emma's eyes to see if there was any gratitude there. Her eyes had become a lot more expressive since the removal of her tongue. The tongue that screamed profanities at him. All Howard saw were the cold eyes of Burn in Hell Brenda, staring back at him sneerfully. Draping the flannel over the bowl, Howard stood up and, reaching into his pocket, withdrew a tape measure. Bending over Emma's dismembered torso, he began to measure her, smiled, straightened up, and began to sing. Daddy's little sugar lump, 4'2", from head to stump. At this point, Howard was sure he saw laughter in Emma's eyes. The hug was missing, but he thought, you can't have everything.